So I chose Chicopee as my downtown intervention. So Chicopee is about 40 minutes away from Amherst and is located right next to Springfield. If you're going to Chick-fil-A, is located in Chicopee. So there's also easy access to a highway, so much of the city is actually very truck friendly or like car centric. But Chicopee does have a few neighborhood centers, including the main downtown, as pictured here, Center Street, and this is their town hall. It's also located next to Springfield. And so looking at the current economic situation, of Chicopee is interesting. It used to be a very industrial city, home to quite a few mills that are not functioning today. It's not a very wealthy city, but there is a lot of economic potential, especially in their downtown. Um, this picture here, as you can see, is vacant storefronts. I was just there in their downtown this past week, and there was quite a lot of activity on a Monday afternoon. But because some of the buildings are vacant or worn down, it does kind of diminish the vibrancy of the downtown. Okay. So, because of these observations and some digging online, I have a few interventions that are hopefully cheap enough to implement relatively quickly. So Chicopee already has a few programming events in the summer, but there is always room for more year-round, especially when it gets cold and snowy. So holding them indoors would is the way to go. But unfortunately, there's not a lot of um, mixed-use community spaces where like large enough events can be held. But I will get into that more in the next slide. Um, And because there are former mills that are currently empty or not revitalized, transforming those buildings into a community hub or housing would be beneficial. Chicopee actually also has an economic plan for 2040, and included in that is making sure that Chicopee residents are the ones using the city's amenities and downtown. So that includes like living there as well. By repurposing old mills into multi-use centers for its residents, the city will be able to make it more accessible for its workers and visitors too. Another intervention is taking advantage of public art. So this picture here of the dog is a mural that was painted in Chicopee, and it really does add vibrancy to the downtown, especially paintings of this scale. It takes up a whole building. But even smaller ones, especially like street art, can make walking on the sidewalk or just like walking around outside just fun for visitors and like making it family friendly as well. Um, and this next slide is an existing intervention that is a little more expensive. And so while revitalizing old mills is obviously like the most obvious building to repurpose. It also does take a lot of planning. And so an example of a repurposed building in Chicopee is the former public library. So after 20 years of vacancy, they finally made a plan to repurpose the old public library. The interior is meant to be a multi-purpose space for small businesses, colleges like Elm College, and events to gather, have seminars. There's farmers markets inside in the winter. And they're also thinking of putting a Chamber of Commerce office in there to kind of have that connection from with like the government support and community as well. It's quite new, I think in like November of 2024, they like announced that this was happening and like I think they like finalized the construction. But it did take 2 decades for this plan to come to fruition. So in terms of time and resources and like the cost, just the overall costs of repurposing this building, it was expensive in that view. Um, okay. Moving on to cultural sensitivity, Chicopee is home to many working class immigrant groups such as Polish, Portuguese, Irish, and many more. By being aware of the community among these groups, solutions can be tailored to the identities of its residents, making the downtown more welcoming to all communities. Another way to do this is by adding more signage in different languages, especially those where you know that those groups are prevalent in the city, and as well as meeting community needs through town hall meetings. Town hall meetings in general are usually open to the public, and Chicopee holds them. So kind of advertising that to the different communities would be a great way, and also making them at times where they're largely accessible because a lot of these immigrant immigrant groups are working class as well. So making them at times where they're accessible, and that might not be the traditional 9 to 5. So maybe holding them in the evening or some like later or earlier in the morning or maybe during the day. Um, and so another way to kind of be culturally sensitive to the residents is holding just cultural fests, and celebrating that culture and history because Chicopee has a long history and it's pretty interesting that probably not a lot of people know about, even if you've lived in Massachusetts for a long time. And so there are some existing cultural fests just in the surrounding towns and in Chicopee itself, but kind of advertising them to the rest of the region, like even just colleges or like especially at UMass where there are a lot of different identities, kind of advertising those. If Chicopee holds them, advertising those to a wider audience. And having those fests kind of promotes small businesses, and it's another opportunity to work and earn money as well, and kind of just connect with your community, all the different aspects of a city, such as government, construction workers, small business owners. They can all like come and connect um, at these fests and celebrate the different cultures that are existing in Chicopee. Overall, there are multiple avenues in which Chicopee can improve their downtown. Tapping into the existing culture and historic buildings will add extra vibrancy and character.